Good afternoon from One King West Hotel in downtown Toronto. Welcome to the continuation of the 112th season of the Empire Club of Canada. For those of you who are just joining us through either the webcast, our podcast, or on Rogers TV, welcome to the meeting. Before our distinguished speaker is introduced today, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our head table. I would ask each guest to rise for a brief moment and be seated as your name is called. Now, at this point, I would typically ask the audience to refrain from applauding, but I know that nobody ever listens to that, so feel free to clap away. So, first, Mr. Thomas Wellner, President and CEO of Revera. Mr. Stephen Pincus, Partner at Goodmans LLP. Dr. Cal Stiller, Revera Board Member, Professor Emeritus in Medicine, University of Western, Chair of the Ontario Institute of Cancer Research, and a Director at Mars. I need to take a breath after that one. Ms. Michelle Roth, Partner at Goodmans LLP. The Honourable Mario Sergio, Ontario's Minister responsible for Seniors Affairs. Our next guest needs no introduction, one of the most iconic mayors in the history of the country, and now the Chief Elder Officer at Revera, Ms. Hazel McCallion. Ms. Verity Sylvester, Vice President at CMC and a past President of the Empire Club of Canada. Mr. Jeff Zabudsky, President and Vice Chancellor, Sheridan Institute of Technology and Advanced Learning. Mr. Colin Catherwood, Vice President, Investments at Welltower. And once again, my name is Paul Fogelin. I am the Vice President of Government Relations and Communications at the Ontario Retirement Communities Association and the first Vice President of the Empire Club of Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, your head table guests. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge two other special guests in the audience today, and that is the CEO of the Ontario Retirement Communities Association, my boss, Laurie Johnston, and our board chair, Sharon Henderson, please. Good. So now that I've secured my Christmas bonus, onto the serious stuff. So last year marked a significant demographic milestone. It was the first year in Canadian history where there are more seniors than children. Let that sink in for a moment. By 2041, seniors over 65 will represent 1/4 of the Canadian population, compared to around 15% today. The statistics are quite staggering. As the demands and needs of older seniors change and evolve, it is incumbent upon the leaders operating within the so-called continuum of care that they evolve along with them, particularly to support their independence, their well-being, and their desire for choice. It is also important, however, that we do not treat this silver tsunami as a problem to be solved. In fact, the term silver tsunami itself is problematic because it insinuates that the aging population and the seniors that we serve are a burden, even a threat to society. Seniors are not a problem to be solved. They are our parents, our grandparents, and friends. They fought wars, raised families, and built this great country. They've lived meaningful lives, and they will continue to do so as they age. So yes, there will be challenges. As people age, the body's resilience diminishes. So with more Canadians living longer than ever, we know that there will be an acute need for housing and care for this population. But where there are challenges, there are always opportunities. And in spite of the harrowing scale of the demands that we face, there is cause for optimism, cause for hope. This hope arises from the talented Canadians who are working and dedicated to improving the lives of seniors, whether in government, the volunteer world, or the private sector. These are good people, capable people, compassionate people, who are rising to the occasion and seeking a path forward. These people are committed to serving the needs of our aging population responsibly, and most importantly, with the respect and dignity that seniors deserve. Thomas G. Wellner is one of these people. To provide insight into Tom's background and vast array of accomplishments, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Stephen Pincus from Goodman's to the podium.
Thank you, Paul. It's a special privilege to introduce Tom Wellner to you this afternoon. Tom is President and CEO of Revera, an iconic Canadian company in the senior living sector. He joined Revera in early 2014 from Life Labs and CML, where he led Canada's largest medical diagnostics company. We at Goodman's have been fortunate to work closely with Tom at both Revera and CML. It's 20 years since we took CML public on the TSX, and we advised it through its evolution until its privatization under Tom's leadership in 2013. Coincidentally, this year also marks the 20th anniversary of our deep and ongoing involvement with Revera, from the creation and subsequent combination of its two public REIT predecessors, through its structuring and development of its multifaceted businesses, and to its continued growth into the international powerhouse that Tom leads today. Revera serves more than 50,000 seniors by providing seniors apartments, independent living, assisted living, memory care, and long-term care in Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Tom joined Revera with extensive global healthcare experience, having played a transformative role not only at CML and Life Labs, but also at international companies like Eli Lilly and Therapure Biopharma. At Revera, Tom has already spearheaded innovation and transformational change, and worked with several partners, including Welltower, to grow Revera's portfolio to more than 500 properties internationally. Tom is a charismatic and extremely effective leader who inspires loyalty and dedication in everyone he works with. This is evident every day as he leads Revera's team of 45,000 employees. And as you will see today, Tom is a highly strategic thinker with a creative and incisive mind, a clarity of vision on a broad range of issues, and a passion for enhancing the quality of the aging experience. It is in all our interests to challenge and eliminate ageism. It is difficult to imagine someone more suited to championing the project. Please join me in welcoming Tom Wellner to the Empire Club.
Wow. Paul and Stephen, thank you very much for that extremely generous introduction. When I ran into Stephen behind the curtains, he said he needed to do a little more research to dig out some more interesting insights into my background, but I told him he was okay. Thank you all very much for taking time out of each of your busy days to be with us here today to talk about a very important subject, ageism. Before I get to my formal remarks, I just wanted to take an opportunity to personally thank a couple of members of the audience. First and foremost, my wife, Mary, and my mother-in-law, Claire. Without them, you don't get very far, so thank you. The Honorable Mario Sergio, I wanted to say thank you for always being there for Revera. You seem to always be able to find time in your busy schedule to be here to support the interests of Ontario and Canadian seniors. Thank you. Our board member, Dr. Cal Stiller, who has made the trek from London, Ontario. Recently, Cal has been recognized at the University of British Columbia with another recognition last week with an honorary doctorate, and he also delivered the commencement speech, which I found extremely interesting, and you can also pick it up on YouTube. But Dr. Stiller heads our investment committee and also has been a long-standing board member of Revera, and we thank you for all your support. We have our industry partners, Welltower, along with Goodman's. We thank you for your kind support, and the Venerable Hazel McCallion, who I will refer to later in my talk. We thank you, Revera's other CEO. And Sheridan for the great work that we've done together on this report. So, my formal remarks. Today I'd like to talk to you about aging and the opportunity we all have to make very real change in the lives of Canadian seniors with the actions we can take right now. When I became CEO of Revera 2 years ago, the board made my mandate clear: transform the company into a major owner, operator, and investor in seniors living across Canada, the US, and the UK. What I didn't know at the time was that I was also signing on to a social movement to combat ageism. But I was. And this movement is central to my talk today because changing that social view is vital to all of us. We're all getting older every minute of every day, even as we sit here together in this room. Today, our society tends to view aging as a slow period of decline. In reality, we view it as another stage of our lives that can be rich with learning and opportunity and tremendous happiness. To bring this perspective to life, I'll talk about a new report we've just published that speaks to the challenges faced by Canada's fastest growing segment of people over the age of 65. I'll also touch on some of the ways organizations can serve, transform, and invest in this, our richest cohort of consumers. Finally, I want to issue a call to action to all of us individually, to organizations, and to governments and regulators. Our attitudes, our policies, and our action must all change to meet the needs of what is now 6 million Canadians, and by 2024 will grow to 8 million. Let me put a finer point on it. The real opportunity is to dramatically improve life for older adults. For some of you in this room, 65 may seem like light years away. But I can assure you that the changes we can make today will not only benefit your parents, they will also make real and tangible difference to you in the not-too-distant future. The overwhelming barrier to improving the lives of seniors is ageism, stereotyping or discriminating against a person because of their age. Now, if I ask you to raise your hand if you've ever practiced ageism, or if you've ever discriminated against people because they're gay or women or black or Jewish, you'd be outraged. But I can say I've practiced ageism. Have you ever said to a friend, "I'm having a senior's moment"? I know I have. Do you believe you can't teach an old dog new tricks? When you see someone walking slowly, do you think their thinking has slowed as well? Do you speak to them more slowly? Or perhaps more loudly? Or perhaps in a voice more akin to a child? If you've done any of these things, you've practiced ageism. And you may not even know it, but not knowing it is likely why ageism is far the most tolerated form of social prejudice in Canada today, way ahead of racism and sexism. Racism and sexism are widely called out swiftly and quickly. Ageism, not so much. But it needs to be, and it needs to start right now. That's just one of the conclusions from the Revera report on ageism, conducted by Revera and the Sheridan Center for Elder Research. In the report, we found that 1 in 4 Canadians admits to treating someone differently because of their age. The report's subtitle, Independence and Choice as We Age, speaks to why ageism is both so widespread and difficult to root out. Some of it is driven by pride and by the word still. Dad is 85 and he can still drive the car on his own. Mom is 95 and she's still sharp as a tack. Older people have standing in our society only to the degree that they can do what younger people can do. And what happens if they can't? Do they just disappear? Some of ageism is fueled by us simply trying to be helpful, trying to do the right thing. But unfortunately, by taking away seniors' independence and reducing their choice, we end up doing exactly the wrong thing. Our report revealed that more than half of Canadians over the age of 77 say that younger people assume they can't do things for themselves. Worse, a quarter of adults say that because of their age, younger people are making choices for them. We use words like helpful or responsible to describe how we feel when we make decisions on behalf of seniors. But we need to listen to adults 77 and older who say they feel controlled and annoyed when choices are made for them. Ultimately, ageism robs seniors of independence and choice. But the good thing about ageism is that, unlike most other isms, it's not ingrained with bitterness or hatred. Rather, it's covered by a gloss of ignorance that can often be scrubbed clean by a quick application of awareness. At Revera, we're taking a leading role in tackling ageism. Today's Revera report marks the second time we have issued such a call to action. The first was 4 years ago when we partnered with the International Federation of Aging on the first study of Canadians' attitudes towards aging. From that report, we launched a campaign called Age is More to shed light on ageism as a significant social issue that prevents older people from living their life to the fullest. Age is More also celebrates the ageless spirit of older people. Revera has more than 500 senior living communities across Canada, the US, and the UK. And through millions and millions of human interactions every day, we serve the needs of seniors and their family. In my role as CEO, I have the honor and privilege of being able to spend time with older adults. Most of our residents are in their 80s and 90s, seniors, or super seniors as we like to call them. And what I learned from them is that this period of their lives can be tremendously rich and rewarding. I'm not claiming growing old is a picnic, but as Betty Davis said, growing old isn't for sissies. However, we need to stop viewing this period of our lives as a time of decay and decline. I recently visited our Donway Place community here in Toronto, where I met a resident named Mariana Higgins. And Mariana is here today with us. Mariana, where are you? There you are. There you go. Mariana, if you don't know, teaches residents how to play the piano. And I play a little bit of the piano myself. And when I was at the Donway, Mariana kindly engaged me in a duet. And after our duet was finished, we got to talking. And what I found most interesting was to learn the joy that Mariana gets by sharing her passion for music with the other residents in the community. And that sharing and how she is able to be with them and make a difference in their lives is tremendously important to both her as well as the other residents in the community. Because after all, study after study reveals that the older you get, the happier and more optimistic you become. Again, disproving one of the building blocks of ageism, that our 70s, 80s, and 90s are spent marking time waiting for the end. So what's to be done? How can we change attitudes that feed ageism and starve the promise that growing old can hold for all of us? Let me touch on a few recommendations in the Revera report, and I'll start with a few that apply to us all, whether as individuals or organizations. For one, we can avoid making assumptions about what older adults want or can do. No surprise, when we feel more independent and in control, we not only live longer, but we recover faster from health challenges and our days are happier. In our business, what that means is reminding our personal support workers that if Gail Carnegie, and where's Gail? Gail's here today. There you are. Gail is here from our Claremont residence in Toronto. And if Gail would like a glass of wine, what we need our team to know is don't assume that Gail wants you to go and get that glass of wine. Gail may want to go and get that glass of wine herself because she's been doing it very successfully for many years. For this to work, we need to know each of our residents on a personal level. We need to understand specifically what's important to them, and we can also recognize our own stereotypes and prejudices. Our Chief Elder Officer, Hazel McCallion, called out a memorable example of stereotyping in a now famous television commercial where she questioned our former Prime Minister in last fall's election for presuming that senior citizens are by nature frightened. She looked into the camera and asked, "Do I look scared to you, Stephen?" Hurricane Hazel sets an example for all older adults to directly challenge the stereotypes that limit them. And by having her as part of Revera, she has been able to have some tremendously distinct and innovative conversations that I can never have with residents in our communities. And she really embodies challenging us to all change our attitudes in that next phase of life. The other thing we're doing is bringing younger people and older people together. The simple act of spending time with someone from a different generation is a powerful way to keep prejudice from forming, especially when you're young, which is exactly when most of our prejudices form. In fact, we're doing this at Revera through another initiative called Revera and Real Youth Age is More Film Project. Real Youth is a Vancouver-based nonprofit that helps young Canadians tell stories on film. And through this program, we've paired students with older adults, and we've made 80 short films that celebrate older Canadians and bring together what used to be the two solitudes of old and young. And if you ever get an opportunity to participate in one of these films, you'll find it a tremendously rewarding process. So, looking to our policymakers, I'm confident they will understand that the report's recommendations are part of a larger movement to urge governments to inject more choice and independence into our systems of health and long-term care. Not just provide better care, but make better use of our limited resources. To make that a reality, we're calling for older Canadians to always be at the table when discussing policies that affect them. And this is not just 65-year-olds. This is 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, and 90-year-olds. Canadians 50 and older are our most affluent group of citizens. And while there are no reliable statistics on the power of Canadians over 80 and spending patterns, we know that they and their adult children spend more on health and wellness. And when do you not market to one of the richest segments of the society? When you don't do that, you don't tend to invest in it either. And you certainly don't focus on innovation. But those generations of neglect are starting to change. There's never been a greater opportunity for businesses to help older Canadians remain independent as long as possible. The potential upside is tremendous, and companies should do more to explore this expanding market. At Revera, we believe passionately in both the social potential and the market potential of innovation in the senior sector. And we're not just advocating for innovation, we're driving innovation. I'm pleased to announce today the launch of the Revera Innovators in Aging program. What that is each year we are going to select up to 20 innovators that fit our criteria of helping residents, families, and our staff in our communities. Those innovators will come into our communities, pilot their latest products and services on a much larger scale in a real-world setting than they've ever been able to do before. We'll be testing everything from wearable sensors that help identify seniors' risks of falls, to a device that improves blood flow to help wounds heal faster, to a mobile app that helps seniors stay connected to their loved one and caregivers. We've earmarked $20 million to invest over the next 5 years in some of the innovative companies that we believe can become commercially successful. Our investees won't just have great ideas, they'll also have customers with the potential to be introduced into our network and beyond. As John Ruffalo, the co-founder of the Council of Canadian Innovators, said about innovation, we in Canada don't have a starting up problem, we have a finishing up problem. So we're going to help entrepreneurs finish up. In many cases, Revera can become their biggest customer. We can also make our business more efficient and offer higher quality services and a better experience to our residents. Here's an example of what I mean. We're piloting a meal service platform called Continue Care in a number of our communities. This is an app that allows for greater personalization during meal time. So when a staff takes a food order from a resident, they'll automatically know their dietary restrictions and their meal preferences. And even better, by streamlining this order process, Continue Care helps us provide faster food service while our staff takes less time taking orders and more time delivering great customer experience. I'd like to acknowledge some of the talented innovators here with us in the room today. Samir of SenseAssure, where are you? There you are. Thavis and Colden of Continue Care. And Jeff of Perfuse MedTech, who will all be important partners within our Revera Innovators in Aging program. I'd also like to recognize Bill Jarvis. Where are you, Bill? Bill is one of our residents at North Ridge Long-Term Care Home. And Bill is taking on the very important role of Revera Resident Innovation Ambassador. And what Bill will help us with, and he's very passionate about this as you get to know Bill, it will help us really make sure that we're focused on the right things for the residents and right things for the family, and make sure that the technologies we choose will do exactly that. I can't believe that technology is not truly caught up to this older demographic, and in my mind this presents a huge opportunity not just for Revera, but for many of you and your organizations today. The senior living sector will be swept with change within 5 years, and 20 years from now people will look back on this world of senior living the way we look back at life before the iPhone and Facebook. What none of us should tolerate anymore is the one thing I mentioned in the beginning of my remarks today, and that is ageism. If ageism didn't exist, much of the fear and ignorance that characterizes many of the interactions that we have with the elderly would change for the better. And change starts here. So to our policymakers and businesses, I say this. We stand on the cusp of tremendous social change, and this change presents a significant opportunity to look at seniors differently, to invest in seniors differently, and to work with seniors differently. To all of us here today, individually, I say this. The next time you interact with a senior person, ask yourself if you are being ageist. Check your language. Check your assumptions. No more, I'm having the senior's moment. No more being over the hill. No more thinking, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. We must respect older adults and include them in all the decisions that affect them. never making assumptions about what they can and cannot do. If we can do this, when we are all in our 80s, 90s, or 100, we'll be treated with the same respect we are today, and we'll enjoy the same independence and choice we do today. Ending ageism will benefit all of us for years to come. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Tom. I know I'm never going to tell my father again he's having a senior's moment, ever. We actually have time for a few questions, I think 2 or 3. And I just ask if you do have a question, we have some runners with mics to wait till the mics come to you, and we'll go from there. It's an easy crowd, Tom. Oh, we have one.
I have a quick question. You have these wonderful 80 short films.
Yes.
Do you have an idea of what you're going to do with it and how you can demonstrate the individuals in each film?
Sure. It's a great question. If anybody didn't hear it, with the Revera Real Youth Film Project, we have the 80 films. What we do with those films is we initially have sessions at our communities where we bring together the filmmakers as well as the residents and their families. And it's actually a magical event. It's sort of like a mini Academy Awards, if you will. And they basically get, and it's a tremendously powerful interaction when they all get together. We also use those films where it's appropriate and where we get releases to do so to educate our staff and our teams. We've used them in a variety of ways to promote, and in some of our commercials as well. Janet and her team do a fantastic job from our communications group to make that happen. But they're tremendously motivating.
Any other questions? Tom, I have one quick question, if you don't mind. If there's one thing that policymakers could do to make a difference, what would you say that would be?
That's great. We sort of touched on it at our lunch discussion. We operate across multiple countries, so I get an opportunity, and I personally have had a chance to work, I think, in 30 or 40 different jurisdictions, all in healthcare, and I've always worked in regulated environments. And I guess what I would say, aside from what the report recommends, which is really involving seniors in decisions that affect them and not just stopping at 65, do that through the continuum. The main thing I would say is look at policies not just that focus on the steps prior to and regulations monitoring what people are doing, but look at the outcomes. We are, in a lot of cases, having many regulations that actually are not practical. I'll give you an example. If we in our long-term care division respond to a resident's request to have a meal at 5 o'clock and we actually deliver that at 4:30 and we don't properly document that, we get cited for not following the rules. And to me, you have to focus on outcomes, and I think more and more, the more we can focus and weight the balance on outcomes versus the steps to those outcomes, I think it would be better.
Hi, Tom. I think you had a great message, and your research with Sheridan Center is really compelling. How do we take this and move it outside our companies and our sector to make sure that this movement is being, embraced outside of the people here who are so interested in it? Because we have to take this beyond just seniors housing. I think it's a really important message.
Yeah. No, thank you. I do believe it's well beyond seniors housing. I think people will make choices about how they want to live their lives as they grow older. I think each of us can change our own attitudes, but I do think the cohort of quote-unquote baby boomers that are there and are coming into this sector are starting to see things and do things through the lens of caring for their parents. And I think one of the biggest ways we can unleash the power and the collectivism that can really move this forward is to really activate the baby boomer, early parts of baby boomer, because that group has always gotten what they wanted. Since the beginning of the demographic movement, if we can harness and do things within that cohort, I think there'll be a tremendously broad wave of push to get the right things in place.
Okay, that's all the time we have for questions. Thanks again, Tom.
Thank you, Paul.
It's my pleasure to now invite Michelle Roth from Goodman's to provide. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. As Paul just mentioned, I'm a partner at Goodman's, and as many of you know, I'm also the chair of something called the Canadian Senior Symposium, in which I get the pleasure of working with many wonderful innovators, including Tom. And Tom, with your usual flair, your delivery was vibrant, thought-provoking, and very compelling. I want to share a short vignette that I witnessed a few weeks ago at the Goodman's Innovation and Technology Showcase for Aging. Dr. Bill Thomas, some of you may know him, some of you may have seen him. He was named one of the USA's top 10 innovators by the Wall Street Journal. It's from him that we learned that the most obscene four-letter word, Tom mentioned it, by the way, is an S word, but it's not the one you think. It is, as Tom mentioned, the word still. Mom is still able to do this. And that touched so deeply on the roots of how ingrained ageism is in our minds and in the way that we think and operate. Dr. Bill Thomas also asked a question that day. It was a pretty simple one. And it was, who amongst you, and this is a crowd of 100 plus of our nation's leaders in aging and seniors housing. And he asked the question, who amongst you has created an innovation department? In this group, the first and possibly the only person who raised his hand was Tom. I remember thinking then that Tom is our true pioneer. Perhaps, as Dr. Stiller would say, the man on the moon. Now, the all-knowing Wikipedia defines pioneer as someone who opens up the road to apply, initiate, or spearhead a new method, area of knowledge, or activity. I would add to that a new way of thinking. Tom is most certainly driving that wagon, and we will eagerly keep our eyes on Tom's leadership in this brave new world of aging technology and in the battle against ageism. One of the most important things that Tom is doing is multi-pronged pioneering. So technology innovation, it spans just a huge mass of matrices. Sophisticated medication and activity tracking, as Tom mentioned, artificial intelligence, brain mapping, virtual reality therapies. But there's another aspect to it that Tom and Revera are also deeply devoted to, and that's the human aspect of it, and one of the pieces of armor that we really will have in this battle. And that looks at things like how seniors experience the world. And it's the same way that we want to experience the world. We want good food. We want artisanal food, farm-to-table food. We want craft beers, wonderful wines that we can get ourselves if we want to. And Tom and Revera hit the nail on the head. They understand this. They also understand that there are innovative technologies around music and other activities. I had a wonderful moment when I was speaking with a few students, and one of the students was a student from Greenwood College. I was actually interviewing to see whether it was a suitable place for my children, and I asked the question, so what was your favorite day at Greenwood this year? The answer I got was, my favorite days, not day, were the days I spent at the Claremont, because Tom and Revera had instituted something similar to this Real Youth program, where the students of Greenwood would go over and help the residents of Greenwood learn to program iPods, how to select music, how to find genres, possibly even to produce a little music. And that was the students. I haven't yet interviewed a senior, but that was the students' favorite time in learning. And that really says a lot about what Tom and Revera are doing. So thank you, Tom, for taking on the mantle of changemaker in an aging world that simply can't afford and simply doesn't deserve anything less. Before stepping down, I would be remiss if I didn't offer our appreciation for the Empire Club, and particularly Taylor Reid and Paul Fogelin. They have been beyond gracious in allowing both Stephen and I to highlight Goodman's pride in Tom and our pride in Revera. And I'm sure I'm not alone in my impression that this was a wonderfully orchestrated and captivating event. Thank you.
Thanks again to Goodman's, our event partner, for making this possible. We are close to the finish line. I promise you a few housekeeping pieces before we head out into the hot sun. I would also like to thank the National Post as our media sponsor and Rogers TV, our local broadcaster. We would like to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, for live webcasting today's event to thousands of viewers around the world. Although our club has been around since 1903, we have moved into the 21st century and we are active on social media. Please follow us on Twitter at empire_club and visit us online at www.empireclub.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. No Snapchat yet. We'll get to that. Finally, please join us again soon. We have some extraordinary events lined up. Next up, we have Anthony Haynes, President and CEO of the Toronto Hydro Corporation, on June 2nd at the Arcadian Court. Next, we have Chief Justice McLaughlin on June 3rd, also at the Arcadian Court. And last but not least, Premier Brad Wall, Premier of Saskatchewan, on June the 14th, also at the Arcadian Court. Thank you once again for attending today. This meeting is now officially adjourned.